morning. Maggie Braun here, Gather 2030 newsletter, author and gatherer of effective strategies to counter the global agenda at the local level, which is where I believe we have the most potential to push back, and it takes a little bit of coordination. So I wanted to do a little series on myself. I kind of came onto the scene, the activist scene, during the Freedom Convoy and particularly afterwards. And I wanted to give a little bit about who Maggie Braun is, just because people are asking, and I thought I'll just do a little series on that and go forward from there. It's a good, it'll help me to move forward with what I'm trying to do if I can address the questions that are coming up about who Maggie Braun is. So with that, I went to the Freedom Convoy. I was a protester there. I had recently moved to Ontario from British Columbia, where I had my children, and most of my friends were out in BC. They were being affected by the mandates. I was being affected by the mandates. And when the convoy was happening and I knew it was only 3.5 hours away, I just had to be there. I had to go and see for myself and participate in this historic event that was taking place. And I'm so glad I went. It was a wonderful experience, as anyone who was there can testify to. And I was arrested on the last day. I saw them rip down the Canadian flag at the stage and just pepper spray some of the truckers, and just watched the whole thing in complete disbelief and disgust. And after they took down the stage, I moved back a little bit, sat down, and I was like, I can't tolerate this. This is so wrong. And they took the streets with all the trucks, mainly Wellington. I guess there was still some trucks further back, which were pulling out. But at that point, it was mainly just the people, and we were being put down onto the side streets. And before they made their push on O'Connor, I just had this is the line in the sand for me moment, and I'm not going to let these bullies push me any further back. And I took the Bill of Rights and I laid a few copies on the line. I told the police that if they were to push back on just the peaceful people, that they would have to stomp on the Bill of Rights with their boots, and I wouldn't move, so they'd have to stomp over me as well. And me and a few others went through that line together. And on the other side, they threw me to the ground and jumped on me with a heavy knee into my back. Several of them were on top of me. And I looked up into a gun being pointed at my head. And they lifted me off the ground, handed me to the Ottawa police officer. Me and him looked back at the scene and saw the Bills of Rights swirling up in the wind like this in the snowy wind tunnel. And he looked at me and said, "You're going to make me cry." He said, "I want you to know the protesters won this today, and the truth will come out." And that was that. We got loaded up in paddy wagons and driven out of town, dropped off at the trucker towing yard. And thankfully, some members of the biker church and some truckers were there checking on their trucks, and they drove us back to the biker church. And we got warm, and I personally went back into the red zone because that's where my hotel was, and watched them, just surround the trucks that were still not even trucks, the people that were still playing music and enjoying themselves, and just basically it was a sad moment in Canadian history, and there's a lot that we can go into that at a later date and share. But I went home after that. I grabbed my kids and the winter tent and went to Arnprior and enjoyed the I guess I'll call it fellowship there for about a week. Met some great people and shared my arrest story there. I went home, and that's when the PTSD really hit me, is when I got home in a warm environment, and I would try to go to bed, and the pain in my back would just bring back the image of a gun being pointed at my head. And yeah, there, when you have that kind of experience, you it changes you. And I was already dealing with a lot of stress in my life, and I guess PTSD, it shrinks your window of tolerance to stress and the things that were stressing me out over a long period of time in my life needed to be addressed, and that resulted in a separation from my husband. We had been together for 15 years. And I'd been a stay-at-home mom that entire time. And yeah, so those few months after the convoy were really tumultuous and emotional for me. And I just knew that I had to kind of cut my losses and take ownership of my life. And that's what I did. So I left in about, I would say June or July 7th. I forget exactly exactly the month. I could look it up, but it doesn't really matter. And went to my parents' cottage for a few weeks. I went home to Peterborough and uh, acquired a lawyer to walk me through the process, found a place to move to, enrolled my children in school, private school. I wanted to keep them out of the public school system because we had homeschooled that entire time. So make it an easier transition for them. And got my little business going here in Peterborough. And that was a lot of work. So I didn't go to rallies. I wasn't, very well known here in Peterborough as far as the groups that were doing a lot of great work here already. So yeah, I was just going through my own stuff. And then I had met some homeschoolers here in Peterborough, and we had talked, and they knew what was going on with me and what had happened in Ottawa with me. And one of the ladies, Sarah, she is family with Bathsheba from the JCCF. Bathsheba was representing the truckers and the protesters at the Public Order Inquiry Commission. And Sarah basically said, hey, I have a friend who was arrested. It's an amazing story. And she shared it with her, and Bathsheba called me, and I gave my testimony and put in my statement, and they called me to testify at the Public Order Inquiry Commission, the Rouleau Commission, the Commission Public Inquiry into the Use of the Emergency Act. And so I had basically compartmentalized what had happened in Ottawa. I didn't look at any footage. Up until that point, I had a lot of work to do just getting my life restarted. And so at that point, I had a couple days to prepare. I would say probably about 10 days to find footage of myself on the line and that kind of stuff, and just prepare myself mentally to speak at the commission. I went down on the day before my testimony was to be given, and I walked the streets of Ottawa, and I went back to where I was arrested and just remembered everything and cried. And when my time came to speak at the commission, I went up, I did the best I could. And looking back at everyone's testimony over those days, I see that everything that needed to be said was said. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity to speak, because it was very healing for me, very healing for me. And it was an amazing opportunity for myself personally to heal from the trauma of what happened in Ottawa. And when I came out, I went back into the streets of Ottawa, and instead of crying and having that need to just weep, I felt like my voice came back, and I could instead of crying, I could actually speak to my experience there and my thoughts moving forward. And at the end of the commission, near the end of my testimony, I testified to the fact that I feel that the institutions in Canada have been broken. They've failed us, and they are no longer working for the people. And that is what I believe. And I think a lot of people do too. So that brings me to the commission, and I met Stacy and Bethan. I think just Stacy. I don't know if Bethan was there at the commission. I met Rebecca and Jane Scarf from Stand For Thee. I met Chris Barber. We had breakfast the next day at the hotel restaurant, and he and I would say 12 of his TikTok family were there, and they invited me to have breakfast with them and asked if I had a TikTok channel. And I had never uploaded a video. So we uploaded a video that day. I think it got 20 or 30,000 views. So it was kind of an instant platform. And I was very thankful for that, because I have a lot of ideas that I wanted to share, but I'm not used to doing TikTok videos or putting my ideas out there in this way. And yeah, so that was the Public Order Inquiry Commission. And when I came back home, I noticed that when I went even to like my children's Christmas concert, people recognized me. So I became a recognizable figure at that point in time. And I started to get asked to come to events and to become more outspoken. So it's been a learning curve for me. And at the same time, I'm really grateful for it. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up this part of the series, and I will go into what happened after the Public Order Inquiry Commission in the next section that I'm going to do. Thank you for listening. And if you want to learn more about me and the work that I'm doing, Gather 2030 is essentially a newsletter. I'm sharing ideas that I think showcase effective strategies and ideas that will help us moving forward, and just help us to initiate these effective strategies across Canada, because we are such a big country. As much as I would love to see us be able to come to our capital and effectively make change, I think that this really starts at the local level. And there's things that we can do to make everything that we're already doing more effective by just sharing cross-sharing the ideas and working together. So that is that, and I'll see you in the next part of this series. Thank you.